Protocols observed. Welcome to Mekelle Planet Hotel. This is the headquarters for the Africa Union Monitoring, Verification and Compliance Mechanism Mission. We launched here on the 29th of December last year, and you are aware that from the 29th up to date, there is a lot of activities that were lined up based on the peace process that was signed in Pretoria, South Africa, and the Senior Commander's Declaration, that is Nairobi 1 and Nairobi 2. Now, in the peace process, which forms part of the mandate that we came here to observe, critical in the peace process is Article 11, which deployed us in Tigray. That is Article 11 has a monitoring, verification, and compliance mechanism. Also in the peace process, we have the DDR, which is Article 6. And then Article 5 is the unhindered humanitarian access. Article 4 is protection of civilians. And Article 3 is the cessation, permanent cessation of hostile activities. Now, this one is further reinforced by the Senior Commander's Declaration that was declared in Nairobi, that is Nairobi 1. And in the Senior Commander's Declaration, we have 6 objectives. The first objective is the cessation of hostile activities. The second one is the disarmament of the Tigray combatants. The third one is the protection of civilians. The fourth one is unhindered humanitarian access. The fifth one is monitoring, verification, and compliance mechanism. And the sixth one is the responsible use of media.
የትግራይ ጊዜያዊ አስተዳደር ፕሬዝዳንት አቶ ጌታቸው ረዳ ከተለያዩ የዓለም ሀገራት ወታደራዊ አታሼዎችና ከአፍሪካ ህብረት ክትትልና ተቆጣጣሪ
declaration, and we came up with the terms of reference so that this mechanism is in place. And of course, during the Nairobi 1 and Nairobi 2 is when I was introduced to both parties. Then thereafter, we deployed on the 29th, which was an occasion that was witnessed by the whole world. We had the high-level panel headed by Papa Obasanjo, former president of Nigeria, President Uhuru, former president of Kenya, and former deputy president of South Africa, Madam Dr. Phumzile. Then from the launch, the first activity that we witnessed was the withdrawal of heavy weapons. That was on 10th of January in Agulaye. Then thereafter, we had in February the withdrawal of Air Force systems that we also witnessed at the Mekelle Air Base. Of course, as we deployed in Mekelle, the first objective that we saw that for us to succeed in this mission was to engage very closely with the UN agencies and the NGOs that were operating within this region. So I called for a heads of department meeting. And of course, during that time, it was Christmas time and New Year festivities. But I managed to meet all of them so that I get all their concerns. And the reason was that during that time, I realized that they had the footprint within the Tigray. And having operated for the last 2 years they didn't make any impact into accessing most of the localities. So I got all their concerns and worked on those concerns based on the mandate that we had in hand. And one thing that I came to realize was that hindered denial of access for the agencies as they were providing the humanitarian services. So from there on, we've been able to project into the Tigray region more than 85% of the region is now covered, starting from the southern, the eastern, central, up to the western Tigray. Western Tigray, we've gone up to Dedibi. Other than the far end of western Tigray, which is HUMERA, which we are planning to visit in the course of next month. Now, looking at the tasks that are ahead, in terms of DDR, the first D, which is disarmament, is almost 85 to 90% complete. The second D, which is demobilization of the combatants into the designated sites, we have programmed to witness that in the coming week up to the month of June. Now, reintegration is coming up very fast because the launch of the DDR Commission was done here in this hall 1 month ago, and the commission is already established. I have engaged with the commissioner and requested for his program so that we can work on the action matrix for us to have a plan of action. I met General Debbie 1 week ago, and he's working on that draft program so that it is shared. Now, in the coming week, what we are looking at is the withdrawal of the medium weapons and the demobilization to the designated camps. Now, for medium weapon, we are looking at the mortars and the tanks, the anti-tank weapons, which in the coming week and the coming month, we shall witness the same. All in all, I would say the situation right now in Mekele and the Tigray region is quite impressive. The situation has really improved. If you were here on the 29th, even the signal was very unstable, the telephone signal. Right now, as it is very stable. Banking services have resumed, all commercial activities, and even the schools have now resumed. Now, along the way, as we have been going for the long-range patrol, there's the issue of the UXOs and the war remnants. While on patrol to Shire and Axum, and also on patrol to Alamata, we got those UXOs and the war remnants. We reported the same. And I'm happy to report to you that the Tigray task force has been tasked on the same, and they are working on the mapping and the GPS locations for all those UXOs, and they've been tasked to do the clearance. I'm also happy to report that 2 weeks ago, the UNMAS was authorized to operate within the Ethiopian region, and today I met the UNMAS representative, and very soon they are opening up the office in Mekele, and I believe this should be able to help fast-track the clearance of those UXOs. Because even from the media reports, there are incidents that have started occurring, issues of UXO accidents and UXO incidences. And as a UXO expert myself, I feel that this is one area that needs to be fast-tracked so that when the children go back to school, we do not get those accidents. And also, when the farmers resume farming, they do not get those accidents. So in overall situation, I would say that the situation is good, the peace process is holding, and as we are moving forward, now that we have the regional president, with the appointment of the regional president and the appointment of the zonal leaders, this will fast track even the DDR process in a way that the Tigray region will achieve the necessary peace that they deserve. And in all, this will make Ethiopia as a whole a very peaceful country. Thank you very much.
Colonel Sise, His Excellency Mr. Getachew Reda, President of the Interim Regional Administration of Tigray, His Excellency Mr. Mekiyu Abadige, State Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, General Teshome Gemechu, Director, Defense Foreign Relations and Military Cooperation, Major General Musonda Atenga, Acting Head of Military Attaches Association, General Stevie Radina, Head of the AU Verification Mission. Ladies and gentlemen, DAs, welcome and good afternoon. On behalf of the Chairperson of the African Union and the Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, I wish to welcome you to Mekelle for this two-day visit in support of the continuous efforts to consolidate the implementation of the cessation of hostilities agreement that brought an end to the two-year conflict in this region. The main objective of our visit, along with you, the defense attaches, is to engage with the interim regional administration of Tigray on recent developments and to obtain a briefing from the African team of experts under the auspices of the AU monitoring, verification, and compliance mechanism on key developments on the ground, some of which General Radina has already mentioned. These interactions, we are convinced, will give us a better picture of the political and security situation in the region and highlight areas in which we can strengthen our collective support for the protection of civilians, return of IDPs, and the consolidation of the DDR process as outlined in the cessation of hostilities agreement. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, since the deployment of the team of experts, we have continued to observe sustained positive gains in the region, driven by the overall goodwill of the parties and the broader population who have embraced peace and are working assiduously to rebuild this region. As you will observe during your visit, the population is busy going about with normal socio-economic activities, with businesses and transport services more available and reliable. Although more remains to be done, the restoration of banking services, electricity, and ongoing reopening of schools are some of the areas that have brought renewed hope not only to Tigray, but to the rest of Ethiopia. The women, the elderly, and the children of Tigray paid a high price during the war, so it is particularly heartwarming to see the images of children going back to school. The children need our collective support to catch up on time lost as a result of the war. In this vein, we, the African Union, will continue to urge local and international stakeholders to support the process of rebuilding Tigray with an urgent focus on its schools and other educational facilities, the medical sector, and the industries required for generating economic activities and income through gainful employment. For this to be viable, the next critical phase of the DDR process must focus on the small arms and light weapons, the clearance of unexploded ordnance, and the full reintegration of former combatants. Ladies and gentlemen, although the gains made are tangible and numerous, it is important to also keep in sight some of the emerging and remaining challenges along the path to peace. We commend the steps taken to put in place a transitional justice framework to address issues of accountability, reconciliation, and healing. In this regard, it is imperative that we continue to provide the necessary support to the federal government and the interim regional authorities to address outstanding issues related to the implementation of the COHA. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I wish to reiterate once more the AU's availability and commitment to continue supporting the government and the people of Ethiopia in their journey towards lasting peace, reconstruction, and sustainable development. At this point, and as I conclude, I would like to commend the government of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia and the recently established interim regional administration of Tigray for their steadfast commitment to the restoration of peace, security, and stability to this region and to Ethiopia as a whole. I'd also like to commend the members of the AU Monitoring and Verification Mission and the liaison officers for their commitment and professionalism in accompanying the implementation of the COHA. The monitoring and verification mechanism continues to play a critical role in the implementation of the agreement, thereby ensuring that the guns are silenced forever in this region. Our gratitude also goes to IGAD, the UN, EU, and other international partners for the respective roles that they have played and they continue to play in the implementation of the agreement. With these few words, I would like to once again thank you for your kind attention, and we look forward to the deliberations. Thank you very much.
We have now come to the highlight of this program, which is the keynote address. And to help us deliver this is His Excellency Getachew Reda, President of the Interim Regional Administration of Tigray. Sir, you are most welcome.
First and foremost, I would like to welcome the first attaches from Addis, representing various countries from across the globe, as General Tushema was describing you. And welcome to Mekelle, welcome to Tigray. It's my distinct honor and privilege to welcome you here and to give you brief remarks on the distance we have so far traveled with regard to the implementation of the cessation hostilities agreement. It's been over 6 months since the Pretoria agreement was signed, and both sides have shown their commitment to the implementation of the cessation hostilities agreement. In fact, one of the components of the agreement, as Major General Radina rightly pointed out, is the establishment of the monitoring and verification mechanism, which was launched on the 29th of November here in the presence of the members of the panel, including the chairperson of the panel, Olusegun Obasanjo. Yes, there have been ups and downs, but the monitoring and verification mechanism has been doing its level best to remain true to the commitment that it has entered when it was launched, which is, of course, as the head of the mission rightly pointed out, it was essentially about ensuring that hostilities had indeed stopped, that the cessation of hostilities agreement indeed held, that civilian protection was taken care of, that there was unhindered access to humanitarian aid, that external forces other than the ANDF were have fully left Tigray, parts of Tigray. And I would like to commend the job that General Radina and his team have done in ensuring that those activities are indeed done. As he has rightly pointed out, a lot remains to be done. One thing I should add is another important component of the arrangement is for the DDR process to be taken care of. As he has rightly pointed out, significant portion of the DDR process has been taken care of, especially the disarmament part, but demobilization and reintegration are areas that could not be undertaken unless the rest of the world extends its support, and of course, it requires resources, and resources cannot and should not be expected only from the federal government, from local authorities, and it is incumbent upon the international community, and I have reason to believe that your representatives here would pass that message to their respective capitals, that the other parts of the DDR process, the second D and DR, would essentially require the mobilization of resources that, as General Tushema rightly pointed out, would require our collective efforts. I would expect that to be the case. Yes, civilian protection is something that we take very seriously. Although General Radina was speaking in a familiar military lingo, annexo, in our case, need to be further defined, because we are trying to resume education after 4 years of forced hiatus, as it were. And most of our schools are full of IDPs. The schools are essentially where there are, in some cases, graveyards, but more importantly, there are unexplored ordinances that need to be taken care of if we are going to ensure the safety of our children whom we are sending to school. Although we know there is little in the way of amenities in those schools, because most of the schools have been destroyed, and destroyed in a manner that would require maximum attention to repair and to rebuild, probably from ground up. Yes, there are still areas where General Radina and his team continue to face, although the federal government has essentially forced the organized units of external forces who were involved in the Tigray conflict, more particularly Eritrea. There still are areas where even their unhindered access to humanitarian aid is still being hampered. I know of a very recent case. I don't have to be bashful about it. I know they have been facing problems. Only last week, the Eritrean forces prevented the monitoring team from carrying out its activities within Tigray. I know they have been sending missions to Alamata, which is the southernmost part of Tigray, which also happens to be my hometown. It's been commendable, and it's also heartening to hear that the monitoring team is planning to send its observers to HUMERA, which is also an area where we still continue to face challenges. But more importantly, the return of IDPs, which is creating extreme stress on our resources, extreme stress on our efforts to rebuild normalcy in this region. And I know with the right support from the international community, we have been working closely with the federal government. We have been working with the understanding that the only way to ensure lasting peace is to return IDPs to where they belong. And apart from our engagements was as federal government, as the interim regional administration, and as a party to this agreement, the TPLF, but more importantly, with the support of the MVM, we'll be able to achieve the remaining tasks ahead of us. And it is incumbent upon me to once again thank and express my gratitude to the monitoring and verification mechanism and to the AU, who has been part of this process and who will continue to be this process to make sure that whatever commitments we have entered are indeed implemented, and implemented in a manner that contributes to a sustainable peace, lasting peace in the entire Ethiopia, not just in Tigray. And we'll continue to work together, and we expect the international community, especially representatives here, to throw your full weight behind what the AU and the monitoring mechanism have been doing, especially in areas where it has been particularly problematic for them to carry out their activities. I would apologize if I am creating inconvenience for Major General Radina, who wants us to keep those things as much private as possible, but he's been suffering in the hands of, unfortunately, the Eritreans who still want to sabotage the peace process. And of course, like I said, with their decision to extend their mission in other parts of Tigray And with our commitment, collective commitment of both the federal government and the interim regional administration to resettle IDPs to where they belong in parts of Tigray which still are off limits to our administration, would achieve everything that will help sustain our peace. And there is no going back as far as our choice for peace is concerned. Rest assured, the internal regional administration and all stakeholders here will do everything and anything to make sure peace becomes the only game in town, because it's the only game in town. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for a very inspiring statement. Colleagues, you will agree with me that, that there has been great progress in the implementation of the peace process. And all the speakers, from His Excellency President Getachew Reda, Major General Teshume, Dr. Ba, and General Radina, all of them have talked about, the progress that has been made in the implementation of the peace process. And also, there have been commendations for the monitoring and verification and compliance unit that is here.